All right, folks, we've done it. We are at the end of the Bach Preludes, and what a fitting end it is. Since we started this series, there's been a steady ramping up of difficulty from the easiest, I put that in quotes because nothing is actually easy, the C major Prelude, and we've been slowly building up the difficulty, culminating not in this piece. I wouldn't say this is the hardest piece. I still think the G major and D major preludes are the hardest ones, but this is certainly the showiest by a fair amount, which I think makes for a very, very nice fitting end. Before we dive into it, I feel obliged to justify why I don't play all 24 preludes. As opposed to the Chopin preludes where I have absolutely no qualms skipping over the 4 that I skip over. In here with the Well-Tempered Clavier, I actually do feel a little bad. Not about the E-flat major prelude. That one I really don't, I don't care for very much. Although I almost want to play it just as a tribute to the absolute audacity of Bach to include that prelude. It is by far the longest prelude, and it's also predominantly a fugue. I mean, think about this. So in a collection of 24 preludes and 24 fugues, for one of the preludes to be literally a fugue is, again, audacious. But I don't play it. I don't have much qualms about that. The A major prelude and the G minor prelude, I'd feel a little bit bad. They do have a couple of moments that I quite like, especially the G minor one. But it's hard to sustain across the entire piece, even though they're not particularly that long. Although I guess the G minor one is a little long if you play it slower. The F minor prelude, however, I do feel pretty bad about that. I don't have much of an excuse, but my reasoning is when I play the series, all the preludes from beginning to end, with some pauses like to talk about them to the audience. But anyways, when I play all the preludes, the F minor kind of, because it's pretty slow and long, being slow, it kind of interrupts the flow a little bit. On the other hand, it is a very beautiful prelude with a lot of very interesting stuff going on in it, so I feel a little bit bad about that. Well, in any case, that leaves the B-flat major prelude, and like I said, it's a very, very fitting end. A nice capstone. So it is the showiest prelude in both scales and arpeggios, which is, well, kind of arpeggios. It's more like quasi-tremolos, which is very fitting for a work that is partly very pedagogical, that we end with very, very fast runs of scales and arpeggios. Something like that. Not actually like that. It also starts with these, speaking of it being a capstone, with these just amazing thirds. Again, I know they're not actually thirds. I mean, I guess it's technically a 10th, and over here this would be like a 6th, but whatever. Take this, bring it down like here. What we're responding to are these thirds. My God, it gives me goosebumps just in that version. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Now, this being a very showy piece, actually, I don't have too much to say about it. You need to play very, very fast scales. And there's not, I mean, this isn't the forum to talk about, that level of technique. It's really something you need to build up with a teacher or, and reading books and a lifetime of practice. The arpeggios, quasi-arpeggios, quasi-tremolos, as well. It's just you need very, very, very fast technique for scales and arpeggios. However, I do want to talk a little bit about these quasi-arpeggios, quasi-tremolos, because it is the most interesting part of this piece. The big scale runs are just big scale runs. There's not much to say. But the technique required for the beginning, for these quasi-tremolos, quasi-trills, is the last time I'm going to say that phrase, I promise. Actually, no, probably won't. I'll probably say it again. It is pretty difficult, and I do not, I don't have it. Sometimes I pull it off, sometimes not. It really depends on how fast I take it, whether the stars align. But there is some things that I want to talk about there. And actually, this is another reason why it's a very fitting capstone to this series, because we've I mean, even though the G major and D major preludes are harder, the technique here is really, it's a bit beyond me, unfortunately. So it's a fitting end to talk about something that I probably should not be talking about. Okay, so let's dig into it. What can I say? What can we look at with this opening? So I call them quasi-arpeggios, quasi-tremolos. Let's see, okay, how are they like arpeggios? They're really like arpeggios because if you put the hands together, I mean, this is an arpeggio. Do, 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 do. We see stuff like this in the romantic repertoire with the left hand and the pedal. Ooh, isn't this? Do, 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 do. That's Chopin. So if you ignore the fact that we've got separate hands, it is like an arpeggio. In fact, one of the showy elements of this piece and a lot of Bach is when the two hands, when one hand picks up where the other one left off. Some of these very fast scales, again, we've got one scale, but it's split up across two hands. However, the articulation here really makes it, not just the articulation, but the dynamics as well, really makes it feel like we actually do have two separate things. So instead of looking at them like as arpeggios, we can look at them as kind of like tremolos, where the left hand plays this kind of bass line, and the right hand plays tremolos. So if we add in the missing note, this missing 30-second note, that is a 30-second, right, the way it's written? Yeah, 30-second note. You can view these as trills. Excuse me, tremolos. Oh my God, the next part. So that makes these feel really like tremolos. So we're kind of in between arpeggios and tremolos. One thing that helps me a lot to play these is, well, actually, no, let me take a step back. I noticed that if I play them like tremolos and I fill in that missing beat, it's not that hard to play this opening. I said not that hard, not still hard. The thumb doesn't play too loudly. I can hear this upper note. I can switch between the tremolos. But something happens as soon as you skip that initial note and play this more like arpeggios. There's a tendency for the thumb to be pretty difficult, for maybe the upper note to not be heard. That might be a fingering thing. This is another thing I wanted to mention. I play with 4 over here, but it might be better to play with a 5 because it's a stronger finger. On the other hand, if you play with a 4, the rest of the fingers fall in pretty naturally. So you'll need to find a balance there between proper fingering and being able to play this up to tempo. Speaking of fingering, just real quick, on the next chord, when we go here with the G minor, the 2 chord, this is a 2-5-1, by the way. This, going from here to here with a 3 on the A is just too difficult for me. Because again, the 4th finger doesn't like staying above the 3rd finger, especially for my hand, but we've talked about this before, the 4th finger being the way it is, it generally does not like to be raised too much without also being coupled with the 3rd or the 5th finger. So when I play this part, you can see I use the 4th finger both on the B flat and on the A. So because playing this more like an arpeggio, for some reason, it really causes the thumb to be too difficult, maybe the upper note not to be heard as much. It helps me to really feel more like, less like tremolos and more like an arpeggio. Yep. So despite the articulation, really to feel it like an arpeggio. But again, I'm still struggling with this, and sometimes it pulls off, I pull it off, sometimes not. So I don't know what to say. Try practicing them like tremolos, try practicing them like arpeggios, try different fingerings, be aware of the thumb to not be too loud, and hopefully you'll pull it off. Very beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's almost a little sad that it's so fast because you really want to lean into these gorgeous, like, give me goosebumps. I'll say this again, I haven't said this enough. Every single one of these preludes, even though I've been playing them for like over a year, I'm just not tired of them. Every single one of these preludes, there is a moment where I just get goosebumps. Something happens, and I don't know, it hits me. The way Bob Marley said, when music hits you without feeling any pain. Every time I play one of these preludes, my goal is to make myself get that moment of goosebumps. So that's my one tip for the Well-Tempered Clavier. Let me summarize this entire series. Feel the rhythm, feel the pulse. We haven't talked about the pulse, but it should be pretty obvious that here as well you have this doon, doo, doon, doon. It's a nice danceable pulse. Feel the pulse, feel the rhythm. Try to give yourself goosebumps at least once every single one of these preludes, and just enjoy them. Yeah. What a terrible ending to the series. I should have written out something. So I hope you enjoyed this quasi episode with quasi-tremolos and quasi-arpeggios. I hope you found some interesting, maybe if you haven't played all these preludes, hopefully you're more interested in some of them. If you do play the preludes, I really hope that this actually has helped you to learn something or see something in a slightly different way and up your technique or the way that you view these preludes. And thanks for watching, very, very much. Thanks for watching, everybody who commented, who supported me. It feels good to know that somebody actually got something out of this. I'm not just doing it for myself, although I do play these largely for myself. I do appreciate very much everybody who commented, who watched, and who got something out of this. So thank you very, very much. Let's play the piece. Again, I've actually already played this, and this might be the one prelude where I need to splice together like 3 takes to put something cohesive together, because it is pretty difficult. So let's hear the piece. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you, well, we got more of the Chopin preludes, so I'll see you at the Chopin preludes. But that's it for the Bach. Thank you very much. Have a good one.